group. Kol omer kra ba'amar ma'akra, kol habasar. Let's do that again. Kol omer kra ba'amar ma'akra, kol habasar chatzir, v'chol chasto ketzitz hasadeh, yavesh chatzir novel tzitz ki ruach Adonai nashva bo. Achein chatzir ha'am, yavesh chatzir novel tzitz u'devar Eloheinu yakum li'olam. A voice says, cry out. But I ask, what shall I cry? All flesh is like grass. All of its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers and the flower fades when a wind from God blows upon it. Surely, therefore, people are like grass. The grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of God endures forever. Everyone can hear okay? Here we are. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi agur bihalecha, mi yishkon bahar kachecha, holech tamim ufuel tzedek v'dover emet bilvavo. Lo ragal al lishono, lo asa l'rehu ra'ah, v'cherpa lo nasa al krovo. Yivzeh beinav nimas, ve'et yirei Adonai yechabed, nishba lahara v'lo yamir. Kaspo lo natan b'neshech, v'shochad al naki lo lakach, osa ele lo yimot li'olam. O Lord, who will dwell in your sanctuary? Who will live with you upon your holy mountain? She who lives with integrity, who does what is right, who speaks the truth in her heart, who does no evil to a fellow human being, who does not reproach her neighbor. Whoever does these things shall stand firm forever. When I was, you all know about high school yearbooks. When I was in high school, there were always these special categories for seniors, the most likely to succeed, friendliest, most athletic. Your mother would have won most likely to teach her young children how to file a tax return. Your mom was organized. She was responsible. She was capable. She was efficient. Did I say she was organized? She was organized. And she wanted you to be that way as well. If there were a project, your mother was on it. She was smart. She was focused. She could be intense. Very determined person. She kept lists and she kept files. She was a strong person who wanted you to be strong and capable out in the world. She was also, though, someone who wanted to go out and enjoy herself, to enjoy culture. She wanted to go to museums even when she was frail. She wanted to go out. She taught you how to live fully, no matter what the challenge. You would go with her to museums, and she would go through exhibitions, and she would read every plaque, right? Every single word of every single plaque. It's a great metaphor for her life. She wanted to immerse herself in everything that life could offer her, in all the activity, in all the life of being a human being. And she needed that strength, the strength that she carried with her. She needed that will and that strength even from childhood. And of course, Malcolm, you and I were just talking before. We'd like to offer you our condolences for brother. I know special memories of your closeness with her fill you today. It really flood your mind today. Your own special memories. Toby's father, your father, left the family when she was only 8 years old and you were 4 years old, and you remember the day. That was a lesson learned by your sister. She worked hard all her life to be self-sufficient. She was not going to be dependent on anyone. And then she began working in the field of computer programming. She was a rarity in those days, a woman working in technology. So again, she had to be strong. She earned a degree in math, of course later an MBA, trained as a CPA. Toby was absolutely encyclopedic in terms of her memory. She remembered everything. She carried her archives up here in her head. And she did very well in school, and she made good friends during those years. And your mom lived her life as the perpetual learner. If there were a class, she was there. If there was a lecture, she was there. You knew your mother stressed education, and she stressed hard work. She loved her Judaism, and of course, she loved her community, her family, and her friends. She taught you don't just show up for funerals, right? You have to be standing up for those you care about throughout their life. And she showed up for her friends and her family throughout her life. I have to say, when I came here in 1990, your parents and their friends were the central families active in the synagogue, raising their kids, celebrating their bar bat mitzvahs, volunteering for committees, attending shul and Shabbat. They were the families. They were the families, the active families. She'd be in my classes. It was first Bible class, and later it was the sisterhood class. She always had something interesting to say, and all the time knitting. She always was knitting. Knitting was always in her lap. Her head was down half the time. You didn't know if she was listening. But then she'd shoot her hand up. She'd shoot her hand up with a question. Actually, it wasn't so much a question. It was more of an assertion. She'd assert certain things. She'd tell you straight. She didn't mince words, your mother. You know this. She would tell you as it is. If things were said in class that would bother her, she'd come up after class. Or she'd make a beeline to me after services. I knew when she'd be annoyed with me. I'd hear that recognizable voice. You know what? It was a math teacher voice. You know how math teachers are? You know how math teachers are. In math, things are either right or wrong. She had that kind of voice. I kept thinking I was going to be sent to the principal's office or sent into the corner. She also still had Philadelphia in her voice, a lot of Philadelphia in her voice. And I would either be able to answer her concerns, or I would try to distract her by talking about pretzels and the Phillies. She still had a lot of pride in her Philadelphia roots, and she clearly loved the two of you. She did. I could tell. She thought highly of you. She had confidence in you. She worried about you. She didn't want to raise two kids. She wanted to raise two adults. And I think that's what she did her whole life. She wanted to raise two adults in the world. She wanted you two to be able to handle yourselves out there. Your parents were very active together, whether it was dinner or theater, other cultural things, travel. They clearly enjoyed being with each other. Your dad was from Boston, right? And your mom was from Philadelphia. I don't know if you know the American historical rivalry between Philadelphia and Boston. No, both cities claim to be the most important cities in the American Revolution. They both claim it. Philadelphia claimed to be the brains of the Revolution because that's where the Constitution was written. That's where the Declaration of Independence started. Boston claimed to be the heart, the passion. They jumped into the water, right, for the Boston Tea Party. They were committed and determined, head and heart, brains and love, intelligence and passion. Everyone who knew your parents knew they were smart, individually and together. They had Philadelphia, it was clear. But up close, you also knew that they had Boston. They had a lot of love for each other. They had a lot of passion for each other. They loved each other. They were proud of each other. They relied on each other. And they certainly had each other's backs. They enjoyed life when spent with each other. They shared many interests. They could both be hard-nosed and yet very friendly and very congenial all at the same time. And as I said, they showed up for the synagogue and for their friends and certainly for both of you and for each other. You knew that your mom was always there for you. It was always important to her to get the family together. And she loved being busy in life. For a woman who was organized and prided herself in being strong, the passing of your dad was not part of that plan. That was not something that she had in any of her files and in any of her lists, nor was her own illness. For a woman who was very logical, such an interruption in the plan of her life was not very logical. Your mom and your dad protected each other from some of the limits of older age when he was still alive. And of course, it was difficult for your mom to accept her own frailty once he had passed. Yet, while it wasn't anything she had expected or planned on, your mom was a person who still wanted to live fully, whatever the circumstances. She accepted the medical approaches, and she responded well to the medical approaches. And she moved to be with both of you. And I know you all created such meaningful moments for you, with her, and with your families, and her grandchildren, of course. The determination she had was still very much there, the love of culture. The strong Toby was still there. But of course, for all of you, there was an awareness that this was a new stage of her life, and that was not lost on any of you. You savored it, and you were grateful for it, and so was she. She remained true to herself, and at the same time, she adapted to where she was in life. And you allowed her that. You gave her that. You gave her a chance in this last period of her life. You gave her a chance to live and to be herself. You let the Philadelphia and the Boston, the brain and the heart, live in her and in you and with the next generation. And I know you two, listen, you two were among the most memorable of the kids that I got to know early on. Both of you capable, thinking and feeling people. And certainly all of those sides came out in caring for your mom. I know that your memories of this last period will be cherished forever. Whether it was being called over to help your mother during this last period of her life, or taking your mom out somewhere, or being told how pleasantly surprised your parents were. You'll never forget. She lived with a good name, and she died with a good name. Are you saying something? Okay, go ahead. By all means. By all means. Okay.
You want to come sit?
Are you coming up too?
Yeah. Well, I guess people that know me that as Toby's brother.
Thank you.
Yes. I've been fortunate to know Toby many, many years, much longer than all of you. However, what the rabbi said was almost perfectly correct about my sister. One thing he said that wasn't correct, and I hate to correct the rabbi at a time like this, is she wasn't a Phillies fan. I'm sorry to say. And she and Alex went away and did things together. However, when it came to the Cavs, she knew who LeBron James was very well. We were driving through center of Cleveland one day, the four of us, and it was the day that LeBron James announced he was leaving Cleveland. And those of you from Cleveland may remember how they burned his flag or his number on the arena of the stadium where he played. And you should have heard my sister talk about how terrible that was. It was unbelievable. Okay. Toby and I grew up in Winfield, part of Philadelphia, near St. Joe University. Oh, and this is my wife, Eileen. Almost forgot to introduce her. And in a one-parent family. And the rabbi talked about how independent she was. Well, being in a one-parent family taught both of us to be independent. And we did a good job of learning from our mother, and she did a good job of being independent, teaching her children, as we taught our children. During her high school years, I remember Toby was always in the academically talented classes, all the time. She was really brilliant, and marrying a brilliant man, the two of them passed on their brilliance to the two children. Because I'd like to say thank you to the two children, Michael and Susan, for doing what they did for Toby in her last year and a half since Alex passed away, by bringing her to the West Coast, California, getting her properly diagnosed and medicated, and taking such wonderful care. Eileen and I visited her the beginning of March, I remember, and we spent 3 or 4 days with her in her apartment and traveling around San Francisco and going to Michael's house and Susan's house, having wonderful, wonderful times together. One time I introduced my sister to some friends of mine. I said, this is my sister Toby. She's the one with the brains in the family. Well, later on that night, she let me have it. I have to tell you, she really tore into me. She said, you have the brains, Malcolm, but you don't use them. I said, yeah. Wait a minute. I said to my sister, but you have no common sense. But that's one thing she lacked. She was great with math. She used to, in college, she used to come back and teach tutored kids in calculus and in French. She took French in high school, and she was really brilliant. So I admired that in my sister. She even earned a full-paid scholarship to the University of Pennsylvania, and that itself was amazing to do in those days. And then earning the 2 master's degrees, that was, I was only lucky to earn 1 master's degree. My sister earned 2 master's degrees. In 1965, she saved enough money, and I remember she bought a Volkswagen Beetle that was fire engine red, and she had me help her buy the car and take care of the car. And one day, when she had the car in the garage of our house, I said, you know, Toby, you need to go check the oil in the car, make sure that there's enough oil in the car. No, I said, I'm sorry, enough antifreeze in the car. She said, antifreeze? I said, yes, you better go downstairs and check it. Well, if you know something about a Volkswagen Beetle, they didn't have antifreeze. It was an air-cooled engine. But the lesson I was teaching her was, if you're going to own a car, you have to know about the car. And she needs to learn how to change a tire, she needs all this stuff, and she expected her brother to teach her all that. And she even helped me move her into her first apartment at 1810 Pine Street in Philadelphia, Center City. And she was so happy to move in there. I was happy to get her out of the house. However, she had me at the apartment fixing this, hanging her drapes, hanging her shower curtain, hanging all that stuff.
Well, you're tall. So.
Yeah, I'm tall, and she just enjoyed having my mother and I there together. And of course, my mother went with me to the apartment. And my mother worried about Toby all the time because she was in Center City, single at the time, and the crime wasn't as bad then as it is now, but my mother still worried about Toby. And then after a while, she met Alex, and they moved into an apartment on 3rd Street that I remember in Philadelphia. And after a while, Alex got a job of all places at Case Western University. And that's, as you know, out here. That meant Toby had to move out here. And my mother was all upset that Toby was leaving the area. But my mother used to come and visit her. What my mother did not like about my sister was, as you know, if you knew my sister, she liked to talk. And she would run up the phone bills, and my mother ended up paying this and paying that. She didn't like my sister talking so much. But after a while, Verizon held on to free minutes on the weekend, and till recently, my sister and I used to call each other out of habit every weekend. Either she'd call me or I would call her. And we would just go on and on and on. It was fun talking to my sister, and I'm sure she found fun talking to me. And one of her close friends and I were talking just this morning about things that Toby was telling this friend about me. And I said, Toby was talking about me? She said, yep, she sure was. And the other thing my sister really liked was going to Cape Cod with Alex and the kids and visiting the whole family. Alex's family was all from Boston area, and they had a wonderful, wonderful time. She finally talked me into coming up to Cape Cod. I didn't really want to go because it was July 4th weekend, and it's crazy on the bridge getting to the Cape. And I see the cousins were nodding their head yes. But we had a great time eating fish. Alex sometimes caught, and we used to eat the fish, and we had a wonderful time in those days. The only suggestion I made to my sister she didn't follow is she should have bought a home in Cape Cod when they first started out. Then Eileen and I would have a place to visit once in a while when they weren't there. We'd go up to the Cape, but she didn't try that. I spoke about her sports memorabilia of the Cavs. She really had no memory of the Phillies. She knew that the Phillies played in Philadelphia, but when it came to baseball, my sister was reading a book on calculus or French or art and history or something like that. She was not into sports a lot. And I'd like to formally thank Michael and Susan. They did a wonderful, wonderful job taking care of her in California, and it really meant a lot to me. Was living in Pennsylvania, it was difficult, of course, to get there, and I did get there, and we did have a wonderful time with Toby, visiting her and visiting Michael's family and Susan's family. And we thank you very much for your time here.
For those of us that are vertically challenged. I first of all just want to, I'm going to cry my way through this one. I just want to thank you all for coming. It's very heartwarming to see all of you here. I know my brother and I feel very supported by all the love from all of you today and all the messages for those of you who can't join, who weren't able to join us today. I just really want to thank you all. Many of you knew my mom as the quintessential Jewish mother. She would never let you leave her house hungry and likely without leftovers. When I was in grad school, she even packed my freezer full of homemade dinners that were single-side servings because, God forbid, I go hungry while I'm in school. But as many of you probably don't know, which you heard a little bit of today, of how she became who she was, which was very much a product of a determined and strong grandmother, my grandmother Sylvia, who without a college degree raised her 2 children and really instilled in them the value of education and trying your best. And those values were very much ingrained in my brother and I, which we are passing then on to our lovely kids here today. My mom, as you heard, went on to receive a full scholarship from Penn and 2 degrees. And I don't think I fully really understood how exceptional that was, especially of that time, until I had kids myself and realized, oh my God, there's 2 of us and we're trying to raise 1 kid. How can a single mom, do so well and raise, my uncle and my mother? And after graduated, she went on to teach and moved by herself into Center City. And I asked her, Mom, how did you convince your mother to move by herself downtown? And she looked at me and she said, Susie, she had no choice. And it's no wonder where I get my strong-headed, or actually stubborn nature from. It's very much from my mother. One of my earliest memories was going to the Cleveland Museum with my mom. And going to exhibits was a very common occurrence, both in Cleveland and any city that we visited. We even had a museum membership in Philadelphia, and then we went with Jerry and her children. After going to a Jackson Pollock exhibit, I took her encouragement to heart and tried my hand at his famous splatter painting. Obviously, it ended up on both the walls and the paper. And after cleaning up the walls, that Jackson Pollock knockoff was still in our house today. And I really attribute much of the foundation of my career to that early exposure of visual creativity and art. The past The past 2 years have been both heartbreaking and joyous, both as my brother and I tried desperately to figure out what medication we should give, what the latest thing that was wrong, and my mother, as a result, we believe cheated death at least 3 times. And even this past decline, which was quite sudden, we were convinced that she would rebound again. But with it, we had such joy, and even went to the Diego Rivera exhibit just a few months ago. And as Rabbi Scoff said, she dutifully sat down in front of every placard, maybe to some annoyance of Mike's kids. Where's Grandma? Yep, she's still in the other room reading the next plaque. Don't worry, we just need to sit down and wait for her. And while we say goodbye to my mom today, we will bring her memory forward and in our hearts. Thank you.
My mom likes to talk a lot. She has a family that likes to talk a lot too. So I'll say a few more things. And I think you heard about how important education was to us as a family and a value. It wasn't about grades. It was really about learning what we should learn and trying our best. But for my mom, it also meant being a strong advocate for us. She always wanted to make sure that we were getting the best education possible. When she figured out Canterbury School down the road from us wasn't very good, she drove us across town to Boulevard and Belvoir to go to magnet schools. When Heights pulled the Gifted and Talented program and canceled art, my parents saved money so we could go to private school. But her exacting, and she was an educator too, right? So her exacting educational standards even went to the level of evaluating our individual teachers, which she could still tell you to this day, like which ones were good and which were bad. I remember my 6th grade humanities teacher, Mr. Levin, she was not a fan of him. For literature, he picked out Cheaper by the Dozen, and that was not up to her standards for the type of literature that a 6th grader should be reading. And one time when I was doing a sort of brain-numbing exercise for him on vocab, she looked at what I was doing and she said, "I'm going to write him a note right now. The note's going to be, Dear Mr. Levin, my son's homework assignment is a name. Please look up a name and use it in a sentence and send it back to me." I was mortified. Thankfully, I convinced her not to send that, but she definitely told the school and him what she thought of everything he did. And that wouldn't surprise none of you. Another area where my mom was a critic was food. And it was actually a joy to go and to cook for her or to be with her when she was with food she really enjoyed. And she had a pretty polarized grading system. At the top of her scale was fabulous or out of this world. And if you were enjoying something with her that was fabulous out of this world, it would almost give you joy to see how much she was enjoying it. So my wife's pot de creme was in the fabulous category. Zach, my sister's partner's fried chicken or roast chicken, and of course Toby Bresky's split pea soup. We're all in the category of fabulous. Next, there was so-so. Sorry, Rabbi, but the Park Synagogue Shabbat meals were in the so-so category. And then there was a sharp drop off from there. I remember after her brain surgery, she was in a rehab facility for a while, getting better. And the doctor, who hadn't met her yet, came by and she said, "Mrs. Dybbs, it's nice to meet you. How are you doing?" Checking on her. She just had her head opened up, of course, wanted to know how she was doing. And my mom's answer was, "I'm doing fine, but the food here is horrible." And that was when I knew my mom was back and getting better. I think we also talked about, I think, the importance of Judaism in her life. I think one thing that I remember that she was really proud of was being an usher. Because you remember, originally it was the men's club that did all the ushering. And then there was the first cohort of women that became ushers. And my mom was proud to get there in services and usher in those mornings and bring us there. But then I think the other thing about my mom, which I think all of you here actually know, which is why you're here, was her ability to connect with people. If you were around my mom, if you were someone who's important in her life, she cared about you, she loved you, she gave of herself to you. And she talked to you. Like my mom loved kibitzing, and all of you who are friends with her probably sat with her for hours on the phone or in person, hearing stories, telling you about her life. And it was really an amazing part of her. And obviously you're all close friends, but what always amazed me was how she could connect with people, strangers sitting next to her on the airplane or whoever she was. She would find a way to talk about them, to learn about herself. And one area where that really struck me was during the last year, during her treatment. We had to go to UCSF for 2 or 3 times a week to get transfusions, and she would be there for hours at a time. And all of the nurses in the infusion center knew Toby Dybbs, and they knew like all about her family. She knew all about their families. We always used to get the presidential suite, we called it, the corner room, room 407, with the panoramic view of San Francisco. And it's because they really knew my mom. And even last night, one of the nurses from UCSF called me up to just say how sorry she was and say how honored they were to be taking care of her. Like, she by the way, she hated being there. She hated going to UCSF and getting treatments because she didn't want to be sick, but she still managed to build these real connections with people. And then I think a lot of us have talked about, just to sort of wrap up, a good segue to the final chapter of her life. It's kind of the punctuation mark in the life of this remarkable woman, which is the last year and a half. So, I mean, when we were here last time, unfortunately, you guys all remember, she was in a wheelchair. She didn't know what year it was. You know, we managed to get her diagnosed with hydrocephalus. We took her to San Francisco. She got, you know, brain surgery, and then she had this amazing recovery. And it was really a gift to be able to spend that time with her. I mean, when we were here, we didn't know that, and we kind of thought it was going to be a slow decline. And so it was like this remarkable recovery to have my mom back, and it was just, we were able to spend like so much time together. She lived 5 minutes from my house, 20 minutes from my sister. We saw her every week, sometimes multiple times a week. She went to both of my kids' graduation from 5th and 8th grade. She got to play with Ellie and read to Ellie, who she really only met once before. She got to see my sister as a mother. And I got to know my mom actually a lot better. We used to sit and talk in her apartment. I asked her questions, and I found out so many things about her over the last year and a half that I never knew before. So it was really a gift. And in some ways it was you know, my dad's passing away really enabled this beautiful, wonderful gift we had. But I think the last gift that we had was really being able to take care of her. You know, we spent so much time over the last, you know, 6 months. She got her leukemia diagnosis in December. She didn't want to tell anybody. She just wanted to get treated, and we were able to get her the best treatment, you know, all the time. But we knew that this was not a disease you ever get better from, and we were able to take her to her doctor's appointments and go over and rub her back when she was feeling bad. And it was such a beautiful gift to be able to give back to her all the love and care that she really gave to us growing up. So it wasn't fun to go there, but it was really like one of the biggest honors and blessings in my life to be able to support her when she needed it. And the last thing is, we could not have supported her and done all these great things for her without all the support we had. Betsy and Zach and my kids, like and everyone I work with and Susan's work, they really enabled us to kind of have this time with her, and it was really special. So thank you all for coming. I'm sorry to be here, but I hopefully all appreciate the great gift that my mom gave to all of us. What is it? Yeah, tomorrow. Tomorrow Friday. You're welcome to come by.
Yeah, we can have people from out of town. Yeah.
Let's rise now for the memorial prayer. El mole rachamim shochen bamromim hametzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina b'malot kedoshim utehorim ano bal harachamim hastireha v'seiter kanafecha liolamim utzror b'tzrachem et nishmata Adonai hu nachalata v'tanoch b'shalom hamishkava v'nomar amen. May we remember all of the worthy and the righteous deeds that she performed while in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bonds of eternal life. God is now her portion. May she rest in peace. And we all say amen. Let's be seated. We want to offer our condolences to Michael and Susan, Betsy and Zach, Malcolm and Eileen, and to the grandchildren Kylie, Elise, and Eleanor. The family will be will proceed right now to the burial here at this spot to complete the service today. The family will be receiving friends for Shiva visitation tomorrow and Friday. Tomorrow and Friday from 2 to 6 p.m. Tomorrow and Friday from 2 to 6 p.m. Of course, in the family residence in University Heights. The address, 2588 Edgerton Road. Again, 2588 Edgerton Road, University Heights, beginning tomorrow at 2 o'clock till 6, and then Friday again, 2 o'clock till 6. We're now going to lower the... Yes. Tzadik b'chol derachav hatzor tzamin erech apayim u'malei rachamim hamalna v'chusna u'levad avanim ki l'chadon haslichot rachamim. Adam min ben shana yihiyeh u'alav shanim yitiyeh ma yitron lo v'lo haya yihiyeh Baruch Dayan ha'emet me'imit chayeh. Dayan ha'emet shofet tzedek v'emet Baruch Dayan ha'emet shekol mishpatat tzedek v'emet Nefesh kol chai b'yadecha tzedek b'lo yiminecha rachem al plitat tzon yedecha v'tamar l'mal al perif yedecha. Lahagid ki ashar Adonai tzuri v'lo avla tavo Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. V'hu Rachum Yechaper Avon V'lo Yashnit, V'erba Lashiv Apo, V'lo Yair Kol Hamato. Al Makoma Tavo V'Shalom. V'yashov ha'afar al ha'aretz k'shehaya, v'haruach tashut el ha'elohim asher nitana. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the soul returns to God who gave it. Grant strength and comfort to those who are mourning. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. God gives, and God takes away. Blessed be the name of God. If you would like to take part in what's really the final act of caring for Toby, we'll start with placing a shovel full of dirt off the basket. It shows that you're involved in every step of the care today.
We'll see you when?
Friday.
Friday?
Yeah, Friday. It's cool.
Anybody else? Yeah. Okay, we're going to gather together and recite the Mourner's Kaddish. The mourners get the first opportunity to say the Kaddish here at the graveside. You all set? Yikadal, Yikadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'alma, Dimra, Pirute, V'amrit Malchute, V'chayehon, V'yomechon, V'chaye, V'chol Beit Yisrael, V'agala, V'izman Kari, V'yimaru, Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabbah, Mevarach, Leolam, Ulome, Omaya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, V'yithaleh, V'yithalal, Shemei Kudisha, B'richu, Le'elah, Min Kol Birchata, V'shirata, Tushbechata, V'netamata, Namiran, V'yalma, V'yimaru, Amen. Yehi Shalama Rabba, Min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'yimaru, Amen. Oseh Shalom V'romav, V'ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'yimaru, Hamakom Yanachem Ethem B'tok Sha'ar V'leit Zion V'Yerushalayim. May God comfort you mourning today, together with all others who mourn in the house of Israel and in all the world. And we all say Amen. Services are concluded. We're going to let the family go back to their car, directly back to their car. And then, as I said, the Shiva begins tomorrow.